I do. But some cats will block you out, don't want you to have You know, there's other gatekeepers within the gatekeepers.
Wow.
So what's up with you and Steve, man?
Ain't nothing with me. Well, Steve stole my material on his show, so I had a beef on that. Your talk show he had, and he did all my Halloween material one Halloween. I'm watching. Somebody called me and said, "Man, homeboy doing your material." So he did my whole Halloween run.
This is like Steve Harvey telling people he used to be homeless. That's my story. That's not his story. Steve Harvey wasn't never homeless.
So remember when Steve Harvey was in the hot seat earlier this year? It was like everywhere you turned, his name was getting dragged through the mud. But then, just like that, it seemed like the storm passed and folks moved on to the next scandal of the week. But hold up, looks like the drama isn't quite over for Steve yet. Word on the street is that comedian Godfrey is gearing up to spill some fresh tea about him. Yeah, more dirt might be about to hit the fan. Now, Steve isn't too thrilled about this. I mean, who would be? He's reportedly had it up to here with all the negativity surrounding his name. And rumor has it, he's not just sitting back and letting it happen this time. He's supposedly firing back, saying he's had enough of this blasphemy nonsense. There's even talk that Steve isn't just waving a finger and shaking his head. He's allegedly throwing some threats Godfrey's way. Well, buckle up, guys, because it seems things are getting real intense out here.
Comedians don't appreciate their jokes being stolen, and Steve Harvey has rubbed several comedians the wrong way. Well, it looks like Harvey has found himself in some trouble again.
So Godfrey and his spot-on impression of Steve Harvey has been making waves lately. You might have caught wind of this whole thing when Godfrey showed off his hilarious take on Steve during an episode of his podcast back in 2019. The clip blew up big time, racking up over 3 million views and going viral like crazy.
What your ass say? Yeah. I mean, your ass. She was like.
Fast forward to January this year, and Godfrey still got folks cracking up with his imitation of Steve, especially after he riffed on Katt Williams' words during an appearance. But it wasn't just fans who were howling with laughter. Other comedians were hitting up Godfrey, letting him know he'd struck comedic gold. Now, during a recent chat on Club Shay Shay with Shannon Sharpe, Godfrey spilled the beans on how Steve actually responded to his rib-tickling impression. Apparently, Steve shot him a text, but it wasn't exactly a friendly one. Nah, Steve's message had a bit of a bite to it, with some playful threats thrown in for good measure. Godfrey even busted his Steve voice to give us a taste of what went down.
They say, no, you the only one doing Steve Harvey. So it kept going viral, and Steve sent me a text. He goes, boy, when I see you, I'm gonna beat you.
But here's the twist. Despite the humor, it seems like there might be some underlying tension brewing between these two. Maybe Godfrey poking fun at Steve hit a nerve, because now there's talk that the playful threat Steve threw may have not being playful after all. But Godfrey doesn't stop there. In his chat, things took a deeper turn when they delved into the state of unity within the black comedy community. When Shannon brought up the fact that many comedians seem to have beef with each other, Godfrey didn't hold back. He straight up said it's a shame that there's not more solidarity among black comedians. Comparing it to the white comedy scene, he pointed out how they seem to have each other's backs, hopping on each other's podcasts and lending a helping hand.
I'm not saying there's not guys that don't like each other, but these they will hold that solidarity. That white male solidarity, it will hold it.
But according to Godfrey, it's a different story in the black comedy world. He spoke about how instead of lifting each other up, there's too much public airing of grievances and calling each other out. And he didn't stop there. Godfrey hinted at some behind-the-scenes drama too, mentioning how some fellow comics talk smack about him to producers and whatnot. But he's all about staying in his own lane and keeping it moving.
You know, liking each other's but we don't do that. I know some comics, and I got comics that don't like me. And I'm not saying any names. I got comics that don't with me.
Now, some fans are nodding along with Godfrey, seeing parallels between his observations and the rumors swirling around Steve Harvey. Apparently, there's been talk about Steve not being as squeaky clean as he portrays himself to be. From allegedly using shady tactics to climb the ladder to accusations of joke stealing from up-and-coming comedians, the rumor mill is churning. And if that's not enough, it seems like Steve's got a knack for being different things to different people. It's like he's wearing different masks depending on the crowd. No wonder folks in the entertainment business are giving him the side eye. guy. The details keep piling up, and it's becoming clearer why Steve Harvey is becoming the not-so-favorite guy in Hollywood. Now, the stakes are even higher as even more damaging news has come out about the comic in recent times, and these details seem to prove that Steve's actions have been a long time coming, some of which even happened against people he called his brothers in the industry. We're finally outing the celebrity host for who it looks like he truly is, according to the accounts of those people who have had direct interactions with him. So first off this list is none other than Mark Curry. You know how comedians are about their jokes, right? Well, it turns out Steve Harvey may have stepped on a few toes, or should I say punchlines. In the cutthroat world of showbiz, borrowing a little inspiration from your fellow celebs is one thing, but straight up joke theft, that's like stepping into a comedy minefield. Mark Curry's not mincing words. He's putting Steve Harvey on blast for allegedly swiping his material on a major stage. It's like he's calling out the man we all thought was the comedy king for not being as original as his brand makes him out to be. Now, we've all heard stories about the tangled web of drama in the entertainment business, but here's the kicker. Steve Harvey isn't exactly a stranger to this kind of mess. He's been in the middle of similar problems before. And now, with Mark Curry adding his claims to the mix, it's like we're peeling back layers of Steve's success story that didn't quite make it into his best-selling book. Normally, when someone's throwing accusations around, it's because they're not exactly sitting on top of the success mountain, right? Well, that's not the case with Mark Curry, and that's what's keeping this whole Steve Harvey drama in the headlines. It's not your typical scenario. Mark Curry is not your average accuser. Back in the 90s, when becoming a star was like hitting the jackpot, Mark was living the dream. Started in stand-up, globe-trotted, packed out comedy spots, the whole 9 yards. Now he has taken aim at some big shots in the entertainment game, calling them out as nothing but joke-stealing frauds. In a couple of recent chats, Mark spilled the beans, claiming that Steve Harvey straight up recycled his material for jokes on his shows. And this isn't a new beef. Mark's been throwing shade about Steve lifting his jokes way back when on Harvey's NBC talk show. So there's this explosive video, and it's got Steve Harvey and Mark Curry tangled up in some serious comedy beef. Mark's claiming that Steve, who used to host Little Big Shots on NBC, swiped not one, but 2 of his jokes. And get this, Mark says he already confronted Steve about it in the past, but the alleged joke thievery kept happening.
The thing with Steve Harvey is that he used my material on both his platforms.
Yeah.
After I talked to him, I saw him at Def Jam, I went up and talked to him, I said, man, you're using my material.
Now, Mark spilled the tea to TMZ, saying that Steve jacked his Halloween bit, a personal story about growing up. But Steve wasn't having any of it. He straight up denied the accusations, saying Mark couldn't even name the supposedly stolen joke. Things got heated real quick, with Steve telling Mark to get a life and get a career. Steve went on a rant, saying he hasn't stolen a joke in 35 years, and dared Mark to name the joke he's talking about. He even threw in a grow-up man for good measure. But here's the kicker. Mark wasn't just making stuff up. The comedian came armed with receipts, proving his point and turning up the heat in this comedy feud.
Mark Curry says that you're still stealing his jokes.
Hey man, listen to me.
Yeah.
Now I'm getting sick of this right here.
Yeah.
You grow up.
Mark Curry took his beef with Steve Harvey to Instagram and dropped some serious receipts in a video that's now deleted. Basically, he called out Steve for allegedly stealing a bunch of jokes from him for his show. In this video, Mark compared an episode from his 90s sitcom, Hanging with Mr. Cooper, where he talked about rocking a brown box as a UPS costume for Halloween. Surprise, surprise, Steve made the exact same joke in a 2015 episode of his show. And other comedians like Katt Williams jumped in and had Mark's back. All right, let's rewind the clock to December 2008 when Steve Harvey and Katt Williams found themselves in the headline. These two haven't exactly been best buds for over a decade, and there's a story behind it. So, Katt Williams decided to call out Steve Harvey right before a Christmas season show, and things got wild. Jamie Foxx, who was a radio host at the time, throws shade into the mix by playing a clip of Williams dissing Steve Harvey. Katt, on the phone, goes on a rant saying, "I want to apologize for what's gonna happen," hinting at their upcoming joint comedy gig. But here's the kicker. He drops the bomb, telling Steve that once he hits the stage, it's game over for him as the king of comedy. Steve Harvey then calls in, baffled by the whole situation. He tells Jamie and the crew, "I've always been cool with Katt," explaining that back in LA, he didn't even know who Katt Williams was. Imagine that, Steve Harvey asking, "Whoever Katt Williams is, call me." So, Katt Williams didn't hold back in a recent interview, laying into Steve Harvey. Katt straight up called out Steve for supposedly being jealous of Bernie Mac, spilling the tea on their years-long beef. According to Katt, Bernie felt Steve was trying to mess with his movie roles, even attempting to snatch a role in Ocean's 11, creating major tension. Katt went on to claim that Steve, in an appearance on Club Shay She, tried to act all nonchalant about not wanting to be a movie star. But, according to Katt, Steve was secretly trying to compete with Bernie Mac for movie roles. And that's not all. Katt also accused Steve of stealing material from another comedian, Mark Curry, and allegedly lying about being homeless. In Katt's words, the same Steve that went to go watch Mark Curry do his whole sitcom and then stole everything Mark Curry had. Now, Steve got a sitcom where he's the principal, wearing a suit and rocking a high-top fade, making all black men think he's got the best lineup in the business. And it's a man unit, not the real deal.
The same Steve that went to go watch Mark Curry do his whole sitcom and then stole everything Mark Curry had. The same Negro that hated on Bernie with this same thing. I didn't want to be a movie star. No, you couldn't be a movie star.
Katt also called Steve out for supposedly lying about being homeless, saying, "That's my story. That's not his story. Steve Harvey was never homeless. When Mark Curry was touring with him 25 years ago, he was making $3,000 a show in cash and doing 5 shows a week. They just tell the stories." Katt didn't stop there, diving into Steve's marital history, claiming Steve said it was his first wife who got him where he is, then switched it up with the next wife who thinks like a man. Katt questioned Steve's credibility and authenticity, especially when it comes to claiming to be the king of comedy. He even spilled that he was offered the chance to be the 4th king of comedy, but turned it down because of how Steve allegedly treated Bernie Mac. Katt said, "Because the whole time Bernie was here, you were acting like you were funnier than him. You stop it. That man was funnier than all of y'all." Katt's not holding back, calling Steve out on his claims and keeping it real about how comedy works.
This is like Steve Harvey telling people he used to be homeless. That's my story. That's not his story. Steve Harvey wasn't never homeless.
Speaking of Bernie Mac and Steve Harvey, let's do a quick rundown about that. What's interesting is that Steve started out with a crew, doing the whole comedy thing and making people laugh on stage. But then he went solo and became this huge sensation with various TV shows. The catch? Along the way, it seems like he might have stepped on a few toes, including those of his comedy comrades. And we're not just talking about any group here, it's the original Kings of Comedy, featuring legends like Bernie Mac. Now, if you were around for some good laughs in the early 2000s, you probably caught wind of the original Kings of Comedy show. But if you weren't, let me tell you, whatever you think you know about Steve Harvey's story might just be the tip of the iceberg. There's more to this comedy tale than meets the eye. Alright, so let me take you back 2 decades when Steve Harvey and his crew rocked the comedy world with the original Kings of Comedy tour, earning themselves a solid spot in the Comedy Hall of Fame. It was a game changer, breaking records and basically shaping the comedy scene we know today. The squad included D.L. Hewley, Cedric the Entertainer, and the one and only Bernie Mac. Each had their own style, diving into African-American life and those black-white differences. Now, Bernie Mac was the laugh riot of the bunch, delivering that hard-edged humor. Steve Harvey, on the other hand, went all in, getting aggressive with the audience, roasting folks in the front row about their hair, clothes, and career choices. But even though Bernie was it, Steve closed the show. It seems Steve might have been a tad jealous of Bernie's approach. Even Steve admitted he felt a bit threatened by Bernie Mac, sparking some beef that lasted for years. At least that's the latest scoop from one of the band members spilling the beans to the world. Back in the days of the original Kings of Comedy tour, there were whispers about some tension between Steve Harvey and the late Bernie Mac. Now, the cat's out of the bag, and Cedric the Entertainer, who was part of the crew along with D.L. Hewley, has spilled the beans. Steve Harvey and Bernie Mac? Yeah, they weren't exactly best buds. Back in 2003, Bernie Mac told GQ magazine that Harvey was giving off some jealous vibes and trying to mess with his chances at landing certain movie roles. Steve opened up about the accusations in a 2010 interview, admitting he was hurt by Bernie's words. But wait, it's not just Steve's fellow comedians he's got on his tail. Seems like his workplace might be serving up some drama too. Harvey's been basking in the limelight for ages, winning over not just co-workers and industry folks, but the whole public. He was the morning show guy, and even now he's a face you'd recognize in almost any room. But turns out, the sweet image he puts on screen isn't the real deal. Behind the scenes, he's apparently quite a pain to work with, and folks have had enough. It's not just a little workplace annoyance either. Reports spill the beans on a memo Steve sent to his staffers that's made people see a whole different side of him. Let's just say the news about his work relationship relationships is raising some eyebrows, and not in a good way. So, Steve Harvey dropped a memo that pretty much shattered any niceness pretense, drawing a clear line between himself and his coworkers, making it seem like they were beneath him. In this memo, he straight up said, "My security team will stop everyone from standing at my door who have the intent to see or speak to me. I want all the ambushing to stop now." He laid it out even for the TV staff, saying they must schedule an appointment and not even think about trying to chat with him in the hallway. No impromptu meetings, folks. It's all about appointments now. And get this, he warned them not to walk with him. Now, when this memo hit the headlines, did Steve apologize or try to smooth things over? Nope. Instead, he doubled down on his words. In response, he said, "I could not find a way to walk from the stage to my dressing room, to sit in my makeup chair, to walk from my dressing room to the stage, or to just sit and have lunch without somebody just walking in." He justified the memo by claiming people were taking advantage of his open door policy. So there you have it. No apologies, just a "you folks took advantage of my niceness" vibe. Most people might want to find reason in Steve's perspective on this subject for not wanting to talk to the people he works with. But it's not like this is the first time he's been a bit of a jerk and expected everyone to just nod along. Despite his questionable takes and comedy leaning heavily on gender stereotypes, he likes to play the relationship expert, handing out advice left and right. But here's the kicker. His own love life is a hot mess. Steve is rocking his third marriage, and get this, his third wife was once the mistress to his second wife. He's also allegedly been a repeat offender in the cheating department. And guess what? He doesn't seem to see what the big deal is. Oh no, he tried to justify it, but here's the twist. According to Steve, men can cheat because there are plenty of women ready to jump into their arms. Yeah, it's as cringeworthy as it sounds. If you connect the dots, it seems like Steve might be living by these very words, especially considering his history with marriages. Let's rewind to 1981 when Steve Harvey was still hustling to make a name for himself. He tied the knot with Marcia Harvey, but things took a rocky turn. As Steve worked on his comedy career, rumors flew about him cheating on Marcia and leaving her while she was expecting their third child. The couple eventually divorced in 1994. Marcia, however, kept things low-key and focused on her own life, even publishing a few books. Then, in 1996, Steve went down the aisle again, this time with Mary Shackelford, a makeup artist. The rumor mill hinted that their relationship might have started while Steve was still married to Marcia. Talk about a serial cheat. Steve and Mary's marriage lasted for 9 years before they called it quits in 2006. Mary, usually tight-lipped, stumbled upon a private letter from Steve's mistress, causing quite the stir. She spilled the beans in a 2017 interview, claiming Steve cheated on her multiple times, even with his current wife, Marjorie. Adding fuel to the fire, Mary accused Steve of physical aid during their marriage, which Steve vehemently denied. In 2017, Mary leveled various accusations against the famous TV personality, including emotional distress caused by his interference in her custody dispute. She sought a hefty $60 million in damages, but the case was eventually tossed out. So, after Mary's accusations caused quite a stir, the media jumped on the bandwagon, stirring up a whole lot of trouble among Steve Harvey's fan base. People were split. Some defended Harvey, questioning Mary's motives, while others were disappointed and even angry at the renowned TV host. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Steve Harvey himself addressed the charges, slamming the lawsuit as ridiculous and denying all the claims made against him. He went on to suggest that he believed the lawsuit was just a ploy to squeeze money out of him. But hold on, the alleged cheating saga doesn't end there. Recently, Steve and his current wife, Marjorie Harvey, found themselves in the midst of another scandal. Podcaster Tasha K spilled the tea on Instagram, claiming that Steve was allegedly cheating on Marjorie with his private chef, the so-called green-eyed monster. This chef had been spotted everywhere with Steve, and Tasha accused him of being unfaithful in his marriage to Marjorie. Breaking away from years of keeping their relationship out of the gossip mill, Steve Harvey, the TV host and comedian, is now facing allegations of infidelity with his private chef. Tasha K spilled the beans on her podcast, Unwine with Tasha K, stating that she got wind of information about the 66-year-old entertainer and his beautiful private chef, who was allegedly hired as his vegan mistress.
Green-eyed monster. She's been seen everywhere with Steve.
Now, you'd expect some sympathy for Marjorie as the apparent victim, but it seems the public isn't entirely convinced she's a saint herself. Over the years, rumors and allegations surrounding the couple have hinted that all might not be well. Sources even spilled details about Marjorie's less-than-savory past that surfaced several years ago, adding more fuel to the rumor mill. Backtracking a bit, sources spilled the beans on Marjorie's past a few years ago, with rumors resurfacing in 2017 that dubbed her Lady The online nickname came from Marjorie's previous marriages to two dealers, particularly the first, Jim Townsend, a reputed lord in Memphis. Whispers even hinted at Marjorie's alleged involvement in the ring, with authorities supposedly threatening her arrest if Townsend didn't cooperate. While this is part of Marjorie's history, it has cast a shadow over her marriage to Steve Harvey, with critics pointing to it as evidence of Steve's hypocrisy. Pair that with allegations of Steve's infidelity, especially in his past marriages, and it's a recipe for some serious scrutiny. With each passing revelation, Steve's life out of the spotlight appears darker, and he might be inching closer to losing his fan base. What are your thoughts on this ongoing saga? Drop a comment and we'll catch you in the next video.